Hello, and thank you for joining us for this presentation about Care and Share's Service Area Assessment. Equity has a geography, letting our communities lead the way. A healthy system requires permeable boundaries, meaning feedback is flowing in and out all the time. A forest, for example, is a living, breathing system that is essentially permeable. Water, sunlight, oxygen, and living creatures are moving in and out of it all the time, giving and receiving all kinds of elements of life. And it is that motion, that giving and receiving, that back and forth that keeps it alive and vibrant. We at Care and Share are committed to becoming a healthier, more vibrant system by leaning into this concept of permeability. We thrive when we are continually giving and receiving feedback. So today, we are here to share with you what we did to hear from our neighbors and communities, what we found out, and what we're going to do about it. You've already met Marie, your new Rocky Mountain Regional Manager. And my name is Nadia Fisher, and I am the Service Insights and Analytics Manager for Care and Share. This means that my job is to collect and analyze information about the areas and neighbors that we serve. Couple of definitions before we get started. You may have noticed that we use the word neighbor. We prefer neighbor instead of something like client or guest because anyone can need help at any time. And the people who are accessing our free food pantries are from right next door. They're our neighbors. And when we use the term partner, we mean the agencies and organizations who have partnered with us to distribute food to the 29 counties in our service area. Care and Share brings in food through donations and purchases, and then we ship it out to our 287 partner agencies who distribute it to our neighbors every week. We literally could not do what we do without them, and we appreciate you all so much. So in July of 2024, we began a thorough assessment of the communities that we serve. And this is new. We've never done anything like this at this scale before. And this presentation, this right here, is an example of our commitment to being intentional about how we show up for you and your communities, and how we share with you the feedback that we've been receiving. These are first steps in a journey toward becoming that vibrant, flowing, thriving system that responds to and is driven by the voices of our community. In conducting this assessment, what stood out most clearly is that geography matters. As you will soon see, we serve a remarkable variety of different regions, communities, populations, and cultures. And in order to meet our primary goal of equitably distributing food to all of our neighbors, we need to understand and respond to those differences. So as we began collecting information about our 29 counties, we looked for areas where people aren't getting what they need, where the geography of our state might be an issue, or where people might be facing barriers due to their culture or language or origin. In other words, where our passion for equity may not be achieving everything we wanted it to. The goal was and continues to be to listen to the neighbors and partners that we serve and find out what's going well and how we can do better. And we've been genuinely excited about this opportunity to hear directly from our partners and neighbors. So, what did we do? The service area assessment conducted 11 listening sessions in 7 different counties with both partners and neighbors. We rolled out a survey that collected over 2,000 responses, 137 of those from right here in the San Luis Valley. We looked at Feeding America data, census data, neighbor data, and our own internal data. And from all of this information, we identified 3 major priorities as a focus for the next year: advocacy, culturally relevant food, and an agency academy. Keep your eye on those icons. They're going to show up again later. So what did we hear from Southern Colorado neighbors? Many neighbors left comments describing their experiences with hunger, with food access, and with food pantries. One neighbor said, "I can afford unhealthy, inexpensive, prepackaged garbage, but we can rarely afford fresh fruits and vegetables on a consistent basis." Another neighbor commented, "I do get food stamps, but despite my efforts to scrimp and save, I run out at least 1 to 2 weeks before the next month." In addition to comments, our survey included the Food Insecurity Experience Scale, used worldwide by organizations like World Hunger to quantify the experience of hunger. This scale asks 8 questions, such as, during the last 12 months, was there a time when, because of a lack of money or other resources, you were worried you would not have enough food to eat? Please note the phrase, because of a lack of money or other resources here. So when the question asks if somebody skipped a meal, we're not talking about fasting or dieting. Some of us may have gone a whole day without eating for a variety of reasons, but here it's specifically because there was no food available. So when someone answers 7 or 8 of these questions with a yes, they're considered severely food insecure. By contrast, up to 3 yes answers is considered food secure. Our data showed that 54.2% of neighbors identified themselves as being severely food insecure. Another 26.7% showed moderate food insecurity, meaning they answered yes to 4 to 6 of the questions you just saw. Neighbors across southern Colorado told us in comments and focus groups that what drove them to seek out our services were things like insufficient benefits, disabilities, illness, such as death, divorce, domestic violence, or other impacts to income and financial situations, such as moving, homelessness, high costs, or lack of employment. Neighbors expressed the lack of information, not knowing where to go to access free food, not knowing what the requirements were or whether they would qualify, or having trouble navigating the systems or websites. Many neighbors also expressed gratitude for our services. They told us that food pantry staff and volunteers were kind and welcoming and treated them with respect and dignity. Neighbors also told us very clearly what kinds of foods they were hoping to see at our pantries, some of which might even be possible. So let's zoom in from our entire southern Colorado service area to look more specifically at the region represented here today, the San Luis Valley. This region, which is about the size of New Jersey, is made up of 6 counties with a total population of 46,776, about 0.5% of the population of New Jersey. In the San Luis Valley, that food insecurity experience scale we talked about shows up a bit differently. Only 26.3% of neighbors in this region reported severe food insecurity, which is significantly less than Southern Colorado overall, and another 29.3% reported moderate food insecurity, which is 3 points higher. What accounts for these differences? It's not the number of responses. The SLV makes up about 4% of the population of our service area, but survey responses from the SLV were 7% of the whole. So it's pretty proportionate. We're not sure why this question was answered this way in this area. On another question on our survey, 9.8% of neighbors across southern Colorado reported experiencing disrespect from staff or volunteers at a food pantry. In the SLV, that number is 8%. Here's a comment from one of the neighbors who answered yes to that question. Neighbors also answered questions about barriers that prevent them from accessing free food. 73.7% identified transportation as a major issue. That's these 2 columns taken together. One neighbor commented, "I have a difficult time getting the food home." For the next highest category, neighbors in the SLV rated site too far away, site ran out of food, and inconvenient hours equally, at about 20% each. When asked about factors affecting food insecurity, food costs, was the highest response across the board, followed closely by inflation. If we eliminate those two responses, the next highest factor in the SLV was unemployment at 41%, followed by housing at 38%. When we asked neighbors about their race and ethnicity, some interesting points came to light. We asked this question to look for discrepancies in proportionality in order to ensure equity. In a more perfect world, the percentages of ethnicities that exist in a geographical area would match the percentage of ethnicities of people visiting food pantries. That would mean that the need is proportionate. So we compared responses from CIMSI and from our survey to census data, and the results show that in most cases, these percentages do match, with a few notable exceptions. In the San Luis Valley, while CIMSI data shows a much lower percentage of people identifying as American Indian or Alaska Native, a higher percentage of people identified as Native on the survey. This may indicate that people are more willing to answer the question when it's on an anonymous survey, as opposed to being asked in person at a pantry. But again, we don't really know exactly what these percentages mean. In addition, both CIMSI and survey data showed significantly lower percentages of people identifying as Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish. This may mean either that this population is less willing to answer the question, or that there are proportionally fewer Hispanic people visiting our free food pantries. Despite the disproportionate responses, however, there's clearly a high percentage of people identifying as Hispanic in the SLV, which may be worth considering when looking at culturally relevant foods. In the San Luis Valley, 31.2% of neighbors reported a household member with a disability in our CIMSI system. In Mineral County, that percentage is 55.9%. Conejos County is a close second with 47.1%, and Castilla County is holding third place with 36% neighbor households with disabilities. The number under that percentage represents the number of households that make up that percentage. So while Mineral County's 55.9% is higher, that's only 19 households, whereas Conejos County's 47% represents 214. Our survey also collected responses from our partners. Here are some comments from partners here in the Eastern Plains about their frustrations and challenges. I want to point out that all of these comments are about partners wanting to do more for their neighbors. Partners want more resources so that they can expand services and meet neighbors' needs more effectively. Consistently, the highest concerns from both responses and comments were about food and funding. This chart shows the various sources of funding reported by partners on the survey. Grants, churches and nonprofits, government, food drives, mailings, websites, none at all, and other. Here's that same chart for the SLV. When asked about the sustainability of their pantry, 81% of partners indicated that they have plans and resources in place to continue their services. However, about 44% of SLV partners indicated that some kind of change was needed soon to continue serving neighbors. This slide shows another example of why geography matters. So, for example, while 59.5% of the total population and 53.8% of the food insecure population of our entire Southern Colorado service area is in Colorado Springs, El Paso County receives only 43.8% of the total pounds distributed and has only 36.9% of our partners. Because Colorado Springs and El Paso County is a densely populated urban area with more access to a variety of resources, fewer larger partners are enough to meet the need of that population. By contrast, the SLV has only 3.7% of the total population and 4.6% of the food insecure population of our service area. But the SLV receives 4.4% of the total pounds and has 13.8% of the number of partners. This also makes sense because geographically, the SLV has lots of small towns spread out across a lot of miles, so the need for more smaller agencies makes sense. In order to achieve our major goal of equity, we have to consider the unique issues that the geography of our state provides. So we've learned a lot from our partners and our neighbors, but I want to be clear, it's still not enough. The data is not complete, it's not nearly comprehensive enough, and it doesn't cover all of the areas we wanted to hear from. What we did get is a snapshot and enough information to both show things that are currently going well and to highlight some opportunities for growth. So based on what we've been hearing from our partners, even before the service area assessment, one of our major goals has been that we need to be in touch more often, more consistently, more intentionally, with more resources, and in more creative ways. So please know that our heart is to hear from you, to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in your corner of the world, and to continually find ways to serve you better. Because of what we've heard from you, we've been adding new strategies to our repertoire to make this happen. The agency hotline, video messaging, partner agency coalition meetings, yearly summits in multiple locations, monthly updates from your regional manager, community listening sessions. And if you're using SIMSI or one of our alternative systems, you've probably heard from me far more often than you were hoping you would need to. But how do we make sure, not just that you're hearing from us, but that we're hearing from you and from our neighbors? What can we do to make sure that the voices we are hearing aren't just the ones in our heads or the loudest ones in the room, but that we are consistently, regularly, and equitably listening to all of the people that we serve? We want to become a community-driven organization. We want you, our partners, our neighbors, our community members, to be driving the bus, not just passengers on it. We want neighbors who visit our partner pantries to be able to tell us directly what kinds of foods and experiences they're looking for. And we want you, our partners, to know how much we value your opinion as the experts we lean on to accomplish our mission. So the service area assessment indicated several areas of focus, and based on community feedback, we have narrowed it down to 3 major priorities for this coming year: advocacy, culturally relevant food, and an agency academy. What do these things mean? Each of these terms could mean a lot of different things. For example, advocacy could mean advocating for our neighbors to have better information about services and access to services. It could mean advocating to local and federal government entities about our neighbors' needs. It could mean collecting neighbor stories and feedback to drive decision-making. Culturally relevant food could mean easily digestible foods for our senior populations. It could mean foods that don't require kitchens or can openers to prepare for our unhoused populations. It could mean foods that are culturally appropriate and significant for our Hispanic and Native populations. It could even include foods that are tailored to specific medical diets. And the Agency Academy? This could mean training for partners by neighbors about crafting a more positive neighbor experience. It could mean facilitating conversations between our partners and other organizations in your communities for more effective local collaborations. It could mean training in best practices led by some of our more experienced partners. And it could mean workshops on fundraising and grant writing, maybe led by some of you. Since we want to be a community-driven organization, we're asking you to join us in this work. A steering committee made up of Care and Share staff, partners, volunteers, and neighbors has already formed and is currently working on setting up the second round of working groups. The first working groups have already started. One right here in the San Luis Valley working on advocacy, one based in Durango working on culturally relevant food, and a virtual group for partners working on the Agency Academy. Working groups consist of teams of Care and Share staff, partners, neighbors, and community members. And these groups are doing the hard work of researching and choosing the best path forward for each of these priorities as they relate to specific communities. We're hoping to launch the second round of these working groups in the next month. And if you want to play a part, we would love your help. Scan this QR code or fill out the form you received by email, and we will connect with you about more details. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation and for the work that you do to serve your neighbors every single day. We appreciate you.